We often hear about the coming AI job shock, but if you look at the real data, there's a truly fascinating tension there. MIT recently mapped the entire U.S. workforce with this massive digital twin they call Project Iceberg.
And what they found is, well, the potential is just huge. AI already threatens about $1.2 trillion in wages. That impacts 21 million American jobs that, could be automated right now, which sounds terrifying.
It does. But here's the twist, and this is what we need to unpack. Only 2.2% of those jobs have actually been disrupted so far. So we're looking at what they call the surface index of this massive buried iceberg of automation.
Welcome to the deep dive. You shared an incredible stack of sources with us, a really deep look into global robotics, the new rules for talking to AI, and what's really driving this job market shift.
Yeah, and our mission is simple. We want to pull out the biggest nuggets of insight and connect these dots for you. We're going to show you exactly where the massive investment hype ends and where the immediate practical reality begins.
We've got three main stops on this dive. First, we'll look at the financial risks, specifically the humanoid robotics bubble that's building up in China.
Then we'll get practical. We're going to talk about how you should be prompting these new, smarter AI models like Claude Opus 4.5, because the rules have completely changed.
And finally, we'll go deep on Project Iceberg itself. We'll define this thing called the Model Context Protocol, or MCP. This is basically the digital key that's turning the whole automation engine on, and it's closing that gap between 2.2% and 11.7% way faster than anyone thinks.
Okay, let's start with the hardware side of things, with the humanoid robots. Your sources really zeroed in on China for this. And it's not just private money, right? This is one of 6 industries that the Communist Party has named a national priority through 2030.
Yeah, that's serious state backing. Yeah. And that national priority is fueling a boom that honestly already smells a lot like a bubble. What's really fascinating here is the contradiction you see coming straight from the top. China's main economic planning agency, the NDRC, just put out a very public warning.
They said the sector's overheating. That's a pretty rare thing for them to admit about a favored industry, isn't it?
It's extremely rare, and it suggests the investment is growing way, way faster than the actual utility. I mean, get this, we are talking about more than 150 robotics companies building humanoid bots in China right now.
150. And I'm guessing they all kind of look the same.
They mostly look and perform the same, yeah. The differentiation is just not there.
And yet the financial numbers are just going vertical. You see UB Tech claiming billions in pre-orders. The China Humanoid Robotics Index is up almost 30% this year. And Citigroup is projecting the market could hit $7 trillion by 2050.
It's an astronomical number. But the reality gap is huge. Right now, if you actually look at what they're doing, most of these bots are just doing these little demonstration dances at expos. They're not packing boxes in a real factory or making coffee in someone's kitchen.
Okay, so that just screams red flag. It sounds incredibly familiar, almost cyclical.
It does. It feels a lot like the bike sharing boom back in 2017 in China. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. The mountains of bikes.
Exactly. Investors just poured money in, and millions of unused bikes ended up in landfills because the market just wasn't there yet. That's what the NDRC is trying to head off here.
So despite all that investment and these huge projections, what is fundamentally stopping these 150-plus companies from actually getting into the real world right now?
It really boils down to manufacturing cost and durability, specifically in the actuators, the motors in the hands and joints. They're just too expensive, and they break too easily outside of a lab.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about the AI that is working, the software we use every day. The sources you sent over highlight this major shift in how we should be talking to these new models, especially something like Claude Opus 4.5.
This is such a crucial point for anyone using these tools. For years, we basically trained ourselves to overprompt. You know, that old habit of saying, critical, you must use this exact JSON format, and listing out 12 steps.
Right.
If you're still doing that, you are probably making the response worse. It's overkill.
So all that extra detail, all that instruction that we thought was helping, it's actually hurting performance on these new models. That's totally counterintuitive.
It really is. The big shift is that you have to recognize the model is already competent. When you give Opus 4.5 this massive prompt, it takes you too literally. It gets bogged down in the how instead of just focusing on the what.
So the takeaway is, what? Treat it like a competent human colleague.
Exactly. Prompt like you're texting that colleague. Just say what you want. Trust it to figure out the best way to get there. Less is truly more. Anthropic is even releasing tools like a concise output skill to help people break those old habits.
Which tells you how hard that transition must be for people who've been doing this for a while.
It is, and I'll,
Oh,
I'll admit this is something I still wrestle with myself. You know that prompt drift when you move between different models? The muscle memory of over-explaining is hard to shake. It takes real discipline to pull back.
and shifting to the broader market, we've seen this incredible acceleration. ChatGPT is what, 3 years old now? And it helped NVIDIA surge almost 1,000%. But at the same time, access seems to be tightening up.
Oh, definitely. We're seeing free access get restricted everywhere. Google and OpenAI have limited free use of Gemini 3 Pro and Sora 2. They're citing concerns that their GPUs are literally melting under the load, so access is becoming a real commodity.
And speaking of limits, let's talk about that failure mode you flagged from the red teaming study. 62% of top AI models failed when they were given poetic prompts, things that were, you know, abstract or metaphorical.
This is where you see the cracks in the architecture, and the specific finding is just shocking. Google's Gemini 2.5 Pro failed every single time. Every time.
Wow.
And it's because these models are brilliant at pattern matching. It's like stacking Lego blocks of data. But when you ask them to interpret a complex metaphor, they can't map that abstract idea onto a literal output.
That feels like a fundamental blind spot. So if the best models are consistently failing on non-literal prompts, does that point to a really deep-seated limitation in their creative reasoning?
Yes. It strongly suggests they struggle when instructions aren't literal and structured. It reveals a real lack of interpretive abstraction. So as we move into this real-world job shock, we have to look at the tools that are actually making it happen today. Let's just run through 4 quick examples because they show you where the economy is actually heading.
Right, these aren't just theories, these are actual applications.
Precisely. You've got Manus Browser Operator, which is a big deal because it can automate tasks on sites you have to be logged into. That used to require a person. Then there's Microsoft's VSA1. It makes hyper-realistic talking videos with perfect lip sync. That just changes the entire cost of making video content.
So that's moving straight into creative workflows.
It is. And then you have Vercel's Workflow Builder, which lets non-coders create really complex automations just by dragging and dropping blocks. And Masonry, which is this all-in-one tool for images and video.
And these kinds of tools are the building blocks that lead us right to this AI Red Alert and MIT's Project Iceberg. I mean, the scale of this thing is just immense. It tracks 151 million workers, over 900 job types, and 32,000 different skills.
And that scale is what lets us understand the potential energy here. 11.7% of all U.S. jobs. That's over 21 million roles, accounting for 1.2 trillion in wages that can be automated today with what we have now.
But we keep coming back to that low 2.2% surface index. So why? Why is there still this huge gap between what's possible and what's actually happening?
The short answer is it was the connection. Before, the AI was siloed. It was smart, but it couldn't plug into your company's Salesforce or your calendar or your ERP system.
So the intelligence was there, but it was locked out of the business's operating system.
Exactly. It couldn't do anything. That all changed in late 2024 with the Model Context Protocol, or MCP. Think of MCP as like a universal adapter for workflows. It lets any major AI model, Claude, Gemini, whatever, plug directly into real-world tools and start acting on things, not just advising.
So the MCP is the unlock. That's what turns the 11.7% from a theory into a reality.
It is, and the speed of adoption is just staggering. We're not talking about pilot programs. As of March 2025, there are over 7,950 MCP servers active in organizations.
7,950, that number.
Mm-hmm.
That gives us a clear metric for real-world adoption that isn't just about financial hype.
Yeah, and whoa, just stop and imagine scaling that autonomous workflow management at that level across the entire global knowledge economy. It's happening. This is where AI agents go from being little assistants to autonomously managing things like calendars, booking travel, running reports, updating dashboards.
So actual knowledge work is being managed by non-human entities at a massive scale. And you mentioned some U.S. states are already using this data from Project Iceberg right now.
That's right. They're using these precise automation maps to plan job retraining programs and upskilling grants. They are moving money based on where the math shows the jobs are going to be hit the hardest.
So if the Model Context Protocol is the main thing bridging this gap, what's the one factor that now drives how fast the rest of that automation will happen?
The pace now is entirely dependent on how fast more of these active MCP servers get integrated into organizations. That's the only bottleneck left. So to just synthesize everything we've covered, you see this huge disconnect, right? You've got massive hype like the humanoid robotics bubble, and then you have the current reality where things like prompt design and GPU limits are still very real constraints.
Right. The core tension is that the capability to automate 11.7% of jobs has been there, but the adoption, that 2.2% surface index, was stalled. And the bridge that's being built very, very quickly is this model context protocol.
And that technological speed brings us right back to the financial and, frankly, political debate around who gets the value. The sources you shared highlight this messy debate around Genesis AI.
We should probably define that. What is Genesis AI?
It's basically the proposal for how we should tax or distribute the new value that's created purely by AI systems. You know, the value that comes when AI replaces human labor.
And critics are calling this idea socialism for the rich, especially after big names like David Sachs did a complete 180 on the concept.
They are. It's a really charged idea, but it raises this fundamental question for all of us. As this tech reshapes the whole economy and creates these vast new pools of capital, how should we as a society think about who really benefits from all this money flowing into AI?
That is an uncomfortable question, but it's one we need to start asking now, before that 2.2% gets a lot closer to 11.7%.
Absolutely. It's something to keep a very close eye on.
We'd encourage you to think about your own prompting habits and maybe check if you're over-prompting your AI models, and see if your state is using the Project Iceberg data for job planning. Thank you, as always, for sharing the sources for this deep dive.
Until next time.